people will join as they can. So thanks all for being here this evening. If y'all don't know, I'm Sixto Wagan. I am the project director for the BIPOC Arts Network and Fund. For those for whom a visual description would be helpful, I present as a middle-aged Filipino man of Filipino descent with short salt and pepper hair, a graying beard, and I'm wearing a blue and white print short sleeve shirt. In the background is a blue and white quilted hanging, as well as a Lego flower and a crocheted flower. So before we continue, I'd like to offer this acknowledgement. Every community owes its existence and vitality to generations from around the world who contributed their hopes, their dreams, and energy to making the history that led us to this moment. Some were brought here against their will. Some were drawn to leave their distant homes in the hope of better life. And some have lived on this land for more generations than can be counted. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building a mutual respect, connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. We begin this effort to acknowledge what has been buried by honoring the truth. We're living on the ancestral lands of the Karankawa, Akokisa, Tonkawa, and the Mexica and Atakapa Ikshak people. We pay respect to their elders, past and present. Thank you for being here today, and we will be talking a little bit about the BIPOC Arts Network and Fund and the Houston Cultural Treasures. The Black Indigenous People of Color Arts Network and Fund is a learning initiative that evolves through ongoing conversations and process. Our current vision is that is a revolutionary arts ecosystem that empowers BIPOC artists, organizations, and communities in the greater Houston area with transformative opportunities to dream, connect, collaborate, and create. A bit about what we're going to be covering today, or what I'm going to be covering today, is that we will talk a little bit about the BIPOC Arts Network and Fund and how we got to this moment. We will focus on the Houston Cultural Treasures overview and demonstrate the vision of the initiative, as well as the eligibility and the criteria. We'll cover the application process and its components, and then the review process. I'll also go into our Submittable portal so that you will be able to see that, and hopefully that will answer all those questions, and then we will have time for Q&A. Please use the Q&A box or the chat box in order to put your Q&A, your questions in, and then we'll get to them toward the end of the presentation. First, many of you all, some of you know this already, but I wanted to go over how the BIPOC Arts Network and Fund has actually come to existence. In 2020, the Ford Foundation launched America's Cultural Treasures to acknowledge and honor the diversity, artistic expression, and excellence in America, and to provide critical funding to organizations that have made significant impact on their cultural landscape, despite historically limited resources. The initiative was born in a crisis to act on ongoing equity conversations in the arts and philanthropy fields, particularly to address historic under-resourcing and under-recognition of artists and arts organizations of color. As part of the America's Cultural Treasures program, 9 regional partners joined in the $117 million initiative. Houston's initiative was led by Long Chu at the Houston Endowment, who activated a group of artists and arts and culture funders who have come together around Hurricane Harvey relief. I'd like to take a moment to recognize and thank the foundations for their continued support of the BIPOC Arts Network and Fund work. Thank you to the Houston Endowment, the Ford Foundation, Kinder Foundation, the Powell Foundation, the Brown Foundation, Inc., and the Cullen Foundation. Unlike other regional initiatives, the BIPOC Arts Network and Fund is a multi-year initiative whose leadership is comprised of the very artists, nonprofit organizations, and local leaders it seeks to serve. I'm grateful to all the community leaders who have been part of our steering committee, accountability and advisory council, and who have been part of our design teams. Here are some of the faces and the names of the leadership and the arts workers who have helped BANF come to this point. So thank you to each and every one of them. As a time-limited initiative, the BIPOC Arts Network and Fund is strategically resourcing different sectors of our arts ecosystem through one-time investments. Our first granting program focused on getting monies out to our arts organizations, to arts community in a time of crisis and need. We supported arts organizations and fiscally sponsored arts projects with the intention of the resources distributed widely to make the impact across the 9-county region and the multiplicity of our communities. The Artist Awards focuses on individual artists who have had a history of serving communities across Houston. The $20,000 award is unrestricted, and it is an opportunity for the artists to make transformative shifts within their lives and careers. Through the community learning process, we hope that the artists can engage with each other and with BANF so that the investment in these individuals will in turn be an investment in the broader Houston community. The Artist Awards that we just announced, the first 25 awardees last week, I believe, is a $1 million 3-year initiative to 50 artists. The first 25 was announced last week, and please go to our website, houstonbanf.org, in order to find out more about each and every one of those 25 artists. What we're here to talk about today is the Houston Cultural Treasures. It is BANF's version of the Ford Foundation's model that invests in anchor institutions across our region. The initiative will provide $5 million in direct funding and technical support for up to 8 organizations with recognized histories of inspiring communities, artists, audiences, and other organizations. The engagement is not just about recognizing prior work, but also an investment in the living and thriving ecosystem in the region. The Houston Cultural Treasures are organizations who are committed to strengthening the greater Houston BIPOC arts ecosystem. As you can see, it's a $5 million of funding, and then they will receive a multi-year general operating grant ranging from $100,000 to $500,000. They will also engage in a 2-year learning cohort, which is an opportunity for dreaming and experimentation, builds connection, strengthens technical capacities, as well as it's a possible opportunity for fund support. The eligibility guidelines. Organizations need to meet each and every one of these in order to apply for the full Houston Cultural Treasures program. The 501c3 nonprofit arts and cultural organizations located within and serves the 9-county region incorporated before 2008. They can be part of a university, but they must have had consistent leadership and history of presenting and creating arts and culture programs. Churches and other multi-service organizations may also be eligible, but they must meet the arts and culture programming requirements. Recognizing the stated need to address historic under-resourcing of BIPOC organizations, the Houston Cultural Treasures applicants must be founded by, led by, and serving Black, Indigenous, Latinx, Asian Pacific Islander, Middle Eastern, and other communities of color. The BIPOC focus is a strategic focus on stewarding and sustaining artistic and/or cultural traditions rooted in a specific or defined community of color, elevating awareness of that community's contribution to regional culture. When we speak of arts and culture focus, it is a history of on the creation, the presentation, and/or production of arts and culture that is significant to their organizational programs and their budget. At least 40% of annual operating expenses after capital expenses, or an arts and culture program budget that is at least 50% of all programmatic expenses should be the organizations that we're talking about. Those are the eligibility criteria. And when you go to the submittable, you have to say yes to all of those in order to meet that before you get to the other questions on our application. If organizations meet all the eligibility criteria, the following are criteria that our panels will have in mind as they review the proposals. Houston Cultural Treasures organizations whose missions and leadership are committed to strengthening the greater Houston BIPOC arts ecosystem, are committed to network building through participation in a 2-year learning cohort, are aligned with BANF cohort models, which include openness to transformational opportunities, process-based experimentation, collaboration, and shared learning. The organizations must have a capacity to accept and absorb a sizable one-time infusion of dollars without endangering their organizational health and the IRS 501c3 standing. So what that generally means is that they should have an average annual budget greater than $150,000, and that multiple funding sources should continue to be on BANF's 2-year engagement. In terms of the application process, BANF continues to investigate the process for applying, and we want to make the process easier for applicants and more transparent. We also recognize the importance of the opportunity and want to engage those organizations who are best suited for the objectives of this initiative. The application process, we believe, is pretty straightforward, with 1 long narrative, 2 statements of support, and a documents upload that you should already have the information for, if not already have the actual documents. And let me speak a little bit about our letters of interest. It is a 4-page narrative or a 7-minute video or audio recording that answers the questions: what does making a commitment to strengthening the BIPOC arts ecosystem mean to your organization? And what is it about this initiative and the various support resources that make it the right opportunity for your organization at this time? Pretty straightforward in terms of that's what you can fill up to 4 pages, up to 7 minutes. We're also supplying these guiding questions that are aligned with the criteria and with the opportunities and the values that we speak about. These guiding questions do not need to be answered, but they can be answered in order for you to be thinking about the opportunity, some of your histories that you'd like to share, as well as some of the criteria that we've already spoken to. Building a learning community, of course, how do these values align with your current organizational priorities? Reciprocal network relationships. What has been an opportunity that you or your organization has actually talked about in terms of collaborations and partnerships? And how will further investments in these network relationships actually support your organization's contributions to strengthening a BIPOC arts ecosystem? Attention to transformation. What is a transformational priority for you that your organization has not yet had enough money in order to enact that the Houston Cultural Treasures funding might actually enable you to address? How did you determine those priorities? And what additional resources are with the additional transformational resources of HCT funding, what else would be transformed? So again, these are guiding questions. These are opportunities for you to think through and perhaps utilize within your 4-page narrative or 7-minute video or audio recording. In terms of the submittable application, you'll upload your digital file of your letter of interest or share the web link. You need to share your web mission statement, a history and vision, which is a brief description of your organization's history, including the founders of the organization, the date of founding, mission, and why you were organized. For those of you who have actually applied in the first round, it's the same exact question from that first round of funding. We are asking you to upload your current financials, which is an approved organizational budget for your current fiscal year. Doesn't have to be in a specific format for us. It's whatever format that works for you and that has been approved by your organization's board. Please note that we may also request copies of audited financials and or 990s in order to be able to address future versions of those questions, in order to also verify the programming initiatives in that component. But at this point, we're not asking you for the 990s. Statements of support and advocacy. Throughout the listening and learning sessions, we heard that the importance of being heard and being seen. We also recognize that our artists and arts organizations have more opportunities to engage their patrons and program beneficiaries in productive activities that strategically move the organization forward. We ask that you engage 2 advocates. They can be artists that you've worked with, community partners, board members, donors. Ask them in order to take some time to support your organization. They will need to submit a letter or a video that addresses these guiding questions. Why do you believe in the work of the applicant organization? How have you witnessed or benefited directly from their work? And what is the hope that you have for the applicant organization? We also hope that this statement of support or this statement of advocacy also talks about the hopes and dreams that you are bringing forward in your narrative, and how they're interested in seeing the impact of that work and seeing the ongoing impact of your organization. Part of the application will be workplace demographics as part of a better understanding of how the organizations are staffed and what their leadership looks like. We're asking you to fill out this in the submittable. I'll show you that in a little bit later. Please fill out the total number of staff and key leadership and board here at the top. If you look at there at the very top. We recognize that for ethnicity and cultural heritage, that many people multi-identify, as in like Afro-Latina, mixed race, Asian, and white. If this is the case, please add 1 to each category that is resonant for each of that staff member, leadership team, or board member. This means that the totals for ethnicity, cultural heritage may be greater than the total number of staff members. Hopefully that makes sense, but And then we'll go through that in Submittable in just a few minutes. The review process, since we recognize the importance of relational dynamics and how organizations are much more than an application, we will be inviting a select number of organizations into conversations with our panel. These are not meant to be difficult interviews. We're not asking you to prepare a lot, but it is an opportunity for the organization's leadership team in order to meet with the BANF panel, connect, talk, and actually build further connections. So the first step will be actually an eligibility review done by the BANF administration. It will go to our panel in order to review, to read and review against criteria. We're going to invite you to those into leadership conversations, as I just mentioned, and then step forward with verifications, approvals, and acceptance. The timeline for this looks like that the application is currently open, that application materials deadlines are due at 11:59 p.m. Central Time on Monday, July 31st. So you have just over a month in order to finish this. Application review will be from August 1st through October, and that we estimate that the conversations, will be inviting folks into the conversations in the first 2 weeks of October. We hope that the notifications will begin in November of 2023, and the commitment for the Houston Cultural Treasures is for the calendar years 2024 and 2025. For applicant support, we encourage you to go to support.houstonbanf.org, where you can see our FAQs as well as responses to other questions. If you've gone there before, you all see that pretty much Hank and I, any question that you all have actually, the applicants have actually provided to us in an information session, we've tried to respond to those questions and put it out publicly in order so that everybody can benefit from those questions. We will also host 20-minute one-on-one help sessions from July 10th through the 21st. So hopefully at this point, you will have gone through the guidelines, you've started these questions, and that these 20-minute one-on-one sessions will be helpful in order to get you through any additional questions that you might have, ideas around your narrative or any other specific questions. We're going to have limited availabilities, and so that we request that everybody only signs up for one session per applicant, at least at the beginning. Schedule through houstonbanf.org beginning of June 28th. So we'll be able to put that up. Sorry, we don't have that ready for you just yet, but beginning next week, by Wednesday, we will have that available for you. I will go to a bit of the submittable before we go to quick Q&A. Y'all should, if you do not have a submittable.com account, we encourage you that you need to actually register for a submittable.com account, and that there's more information on the FAQs in order to be able to do that. Once you get into this, that you will go into your personal account, and that we can go to your submissions and go to drafts. In that, you will see the BIPOC Arts Network and Fund, Houston Cultural Treasures, and you hit continue, and then that will open up the guidelines as well as the letter of interest. I've already answered all the eligibility questions at this point, so I've gone directly into the narrative, and so it's upload. You upload your letter of interest, or whether it's an audio, video, or web link, mission statement, history and vision, your organizational budget, your statements of support. We encourage you, in order to after you submit, you open up your Submittable account, start asking your advocates in order to make sure that that becomes that they actually start working on that. The deadline for the advocates letters is also the 31st of July on Monday at 11:59. So please try to get them all in at that point. To advocates and requests. The workplace demographics, here's how that chart works, so that for the BIPOC Arts Network and Fund, there is one staff member. Their key leadership is, let's say there's 12 of us, and then board members, there is 13, I don't know, in this point. The number of staff members, there's only one staff member, that would be me, and I identify as Asian Pacific Islander. If I actually identified it as a multi-hyphenate person and multi-ethnic, that it might actually be multi-ethnic, white and European, and Asian Pacific Islander, so that you can see just one person, but yet identifies as three. cultural age range. Y'all don't need to know how old I am, and then also gender identity. So that will be, and then please share the names and titles of your key leadership indicated in the chart. Also, we'll just go through some basic aspects of primary grant person, contact email, all of the basic organizational details that you all should already have in terms of authorizing the official, and that might be different from your the person who's doing this, organizational primary address, and your social media account, and also the acknowledgements. That is the submittable. We can actually spend more time with that if you all have any more questions later, but now is the time for Q&A. So if you all have any questions, please throw it up into the chat. And hopefully you have already gone to our guidelines, or you've already gone into the submittable account and actually started the process. Hopefully you are finding that what the guidelines and this information session has been helpful in terms of what you will be able to prepare and what you need to prepare, and that the guidelines are pretty clear in terms of the criteria and what we hope to actually accomplish within this organization, within this initiative. So go ahead and toss in your questions in the Q&A or in the chat, and otherwise I'll keep on talking for a few minutes, and if I don't get any other questions, then we will end the information session early. And it'll be available on our YouTube page or our website, and that any questions that come up will be coming through FAQs. We'll also be answering any of the questions that came in that prior round, our prior information session. So I think that I actually go to some of those questions so that for you. So one of the things in terms of the advocates, you cannot ask any of our steering committee members or our AAC members to be the advocates in the group for your application, since they are most likely going to be panel members. They have to recuse themselves from being an advocate for your organization. In terms of what is a profile for a best advocate, we encourage you to think. You have two. One can be a board member, a donor, a beneficiary of your program. So it could be an artist that you presented, an artist who you've commissioned. It could be somebody who continues to go through your programs. So it could be community members, former board members, any of those, and think about your narrative and how the two advocates that you're asking to do this would actually be able to expand on the narrative and the letter of interest that you have already provided, and provide more detail or another perspective. We also encourage you that if you have advocates who are challenged by digital technology, you can please help them. Please help them with their video. Please help them with their account. But we do need them to be the ones who actually submit the reference or the letter of support. So you can help them. Please think about that. There's also collaborators in that component. What other questions do we have? Yes, a cultural organization that does arts programming is eligible, but the arts and culture programming must be at least a considerable component, at least 50% of their programming budget, and must be doing considerable amount of programming, arts and culture programming. For their organizational size. Yeah. Again, there was a question from in the prior information session around other opportunities for other organizations or smaller organizations. Right now, the BIPOC Arts Network and Fund, our strategies focus on different parts of the ecosystem. and that we're focusing on Houston Cultural Treasures and the Artist Award. We will be engaging with BANF leadership and community leaders on developing opportunities for arts education, as well as an emerging cultural treasures initiative. More details about those initiatives will actually happen not until early of 2024. Other questions? We hope that the eligibility is clear in terms of that, or organizations need to be, it needs to be a 501c3 or arts organization, that they do need to have a history of presenting art and culture, and that history of presenting also needs to be very clear in terms of the budget and that work. Also in terms of that the organizations need to be at least 15 years old. When we said about the general guide around the organizations should have a budget of around $150,000 or more, we didn't make that a specific eligibility criteria because we know that organizations during the pandemic, their budgets fluctuated. But we do need to make sure that the investment that we are doing with these organizations actually is something that sets them up for long-term success and doesn't endanger their 501c3 status or create too huge of a bump that cannot be recovered from. Nope, the writer of the grant does not matter. It can be the ED, it can be a grants writer, whomever. When you go in Submittable, you can actually be you have a collaborator. There is a collaborator enabled so that you can have multiple people working in the Submittable account. But it doesn't matter who's writing it, just as long as the leadership team all understands what is being written about and is in agreement around that aspect. So that will be the other thing, is that when if y'all are invited into the conversation, it is going to be more than just the executive director. It should be the leadership team, which might include program directors, program staff members, a board member or two. You all determine what that leadership team is, and that we're going to be asking the entire leadership team in order to be answering questions. The 15-year age, because this is it is about investing in organizations that have helped to build the arts and culture sector as we know it today. It is about investing in these organizations who have helped shape the artists and the arts organizations and our city. And we need to make an investment, a strong investment in them as anchor institutions for our communities of culture, our communities of color, and that we will be looking at other opportunities for organizations that are under 15 years in future opportunities. Hopefully that answers your question. Other questions? So I'm going to hang in here for about 5 more minutes. Okay, great. Thank you all for attending. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for the questions. I hope that if you have other questions, please go ahead and go into support.houstonbanf.org and open up a ticket. Email us at info@houstonbanf.org. And we will respond to those emails. Also, then you can call the phone number. It takes a little bit longer in order to respond to phone calls, but we will do our best in this. In order to respond as quickly as possible, please check support.houstonbanf.org. Are there any questions you think that haven't asked that you think board should be asking about? Really, Liana, I think that it's about what is the narrative is about what is the vision of the organization and how is the organization making commitments to a network and the BIPOC arts ecosystem, and in what ways is that contribution to a BIPOC arts ecosystem actually something that the arts organization is values and is in contribution for. We recognize that the application process is relatively simple, but we also know that making a 2-year commitment to our learning cohort is a lot of time and a lot of energy and effort. And we want to make sure that the organizations who are part of this are actually committed to can make a commitment to each other and to our communities. And so that's actually part of what the whole endeavor is. What does that mean to your organization? What does that mean to the vision of your organization? Thanks, everybody. Hopefully this was helpful. And if there's other questions, please check the website. Check support.houstonbanf.org. And also make sure that you are signed up for our newsletter, and we will be able to post any updates via the website or our newsletter. Check those out. Okay. Thanks, everybody. It was great to see you. I'm sorry. Great to share this information with you. And I hope that it is something that you can be excited about, and we look forward to reading your applications. Take care, everyone.